Peacemaker, Season 2, Episode 3. That is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. A full breakdown of the newest episode released from Peacemaker. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, hit that noti bell. Alright, Peacemaker, Season 2, Episode 3. Now, I did see in the comments below, and this was kind of the consensus online, that Episode 2 was somewhat of a snooze fest. And I somewhat agree. It definitely felt like more of a filler episode, and that is definitely improved upon in this episode. Do I think it's spectacular? No. But it is way, way better than the second episode. And I think part of that is there's a little bit more funny moments with Vigilante. Again, I am going to be partial to that character. I enjoy him very much. We get the aftermath from the rooftop party where everyone is kind of hungover. Peacemaker, as we know, went to that other universe. He did text Harcourt, and we actually see the conversation that ensued. And right away, we know so much is different about this other universe. Not only with, obviously, his dad and brother being alive, but just how Harcourt is towards him. And you can see that in just the text messages that she says to him. And you can really get a feel of how much different this world is based on that. But also on that motorcycle ride, as he's going to meet her at Argus, he is a beloved hero. But that actually brings up another point that I also saw online, which is a really good theory that I'm starting to believe is more than just a theory, a hypothesis. I think it is very true. And that is the biggest difference between this world and the world where Peacemaker, our Peacemaker, is from. And that is that in this other world, the reason they are so beloved is also the reason that a majority of the characters we see are white. And I think that is because the events of World War II in this universe actually happened the opposite way. And I think that the Axis powers actually did win that war. And that is further, I don't want to say proven because it's not officially proven yet, but it is further emphasized by when you have the Sons of Liberty attacking that building, bombing it. Obviously, they're doing that for a reason. It's a government building, again, primarily white people in that building, and then you get a look at the people who are doing it. They are going to be the people that would have been oppressed had the Axis powers actually won World War II. So that being the reason why this world is so much different actually makes a whole lot of sense. And I really don't even think it's a theory anymore. I think it's going to get confirmed, probably not in this next episode, but by episode 5, that this is the biggest difference between the two worlds. And another thing that I think is certainly going to happen is Peacemaker is going to be found out relatively easily. His brother is already having suspicions about him based on he didn't even know about his P-cycle. He was going to take the truck. He is not remembering certain things, and he is totally out of it. Now, again, that could be something where he could have a really simple explanation where, hey, I was in this battle, I got hit on the head, but he's not doing that. And it's understandable why he's not thinking to do that, because every moment in this reality is a shock to him. And it's kind of creating this turmoil that we see in real time in Peacemaker. And that's because he is seeing the love that his brother has for him. His brother in that moment tells him, hey, you're my brother, you know that, right? I will love you no matter what. And honestly, I could totally see a scenario where maybe Peacemaker doesn't necessarily get found out. Maybe he tells these people. And the people I'm talking about, maybe not his father, but I really do see him telling Harcourt, and especially his brother, what happened. And maybe even telling them about what happened to their version of Peacemaker. And I see this going one of two ways. I think it could either lead both of them to want to kill our Peacemaker, or it could obviously lead to the brother, I think, is going to want to do that regardless. He is not going to forgive his real-life brother getting killed by this otherworldly Peacemaker. However, Amelia Harcourt, on the other hand, is a very different story, because she, multiple times, says how much he's changed. And this is the version of him that she wants. She's very clearly in love with him. You can see that when they're on the bench together. Even when they first see each other in Argus, and she's technically romantically involved with Rick Flag, but she totally casts him aside just for Peacemaker. So she's fully in love with him, and then that gets further emphasized with the text messages she sends him after their meeting. So again, I could totally see a scenario in which she decides, since he is honest with her, or maybe even if she finds out, it'll be something that she is able to overcome, because at the end of the day, even though he doesn't have all the same memories, he is still Peacemaker, he's still Chris Smith, and actually he's a Chris Smith that went through a lot of character growth, character building that the other Peacemaker clearly didn't go through. And in this episode, we find out a little bit about that, because we find out why Harcourt and that Peacemaker ended. So because he never had those character growth moments, maybe that will lead her to want to explore this with a Peacemaker who did go through that character growth. And I think that'll be a really interesting dynamic to watch unfold. And then some of the other things that happened in the episode, we had obviously Argus, and they're going to track down Peacemaker. They're going to shut down that portal. The bird blindness thing I thought was a little silly. It's still pretty funny. I mean, the moment between that guy and John Economos and "you're taking advantage of my bird blindness, you told me it was a duck" type of stuff. That is such goofy nonsense humor, but it really fits in this show. And again, do I like that type of thing in maybe a Batman project or even Superman? No. But in Peacemaker, it really fits. And that's even further emphasized when you have the moments of Vigilante. And now, I may have a bias because he's my favorite character in this whole show, but every time he's on screen, he steals the moment. Even just the little bit of screen time he gets in this episode, he's amazing. You have that funny banter between him and John Economos about, hey, I know a ton about spiders, similar to the thing where he mentioned, I know a ton about owls, and then the very first question we see him get asked, he gets it very, very wrong and is very confident in his answer, and then he tells him what question to ask him, which is, again, so ridiculous, so funny. But we also see a little bit more of this character when John Economos has to go and he says, well, "where are my pants?" And Adrian says, "oh, I washed them, I folded them." And you have this little weird moment where John Economos almost realizes, like, wow, this guy is really crazy, but he's also pretty thoughtful towards his friends. And I'd really like to see that dynamic explored even further. And I really think they will. James Gunn does a really good job of, even if they're more defined as side characters, he still brings to light character growth moments and really good dynamics with them. And John Economos and Vigilante, I think, are a really, really great pairing. They have an interesting dynamic. And I think in the episodes to follow, they will continue to have that really good banter. And then going beyond that, obviously we saw the episode preview for next episode, where we had Argus going after Peacemaker after he does return. Because keep in mind, he did leave that other universe because he said, hey, I have a couple things to take care of. Now, in my opinion, he wants to leave his world and stay in that new one. Everything he could ever want is in that new world. And I think that's why he was going back there, to settle a couple of things and to let a couple people know that he was going to be gone, probably indefinitely, if not for a very, very long time. Now, obviously, we know that's going to get interrupted. We saw in the preview that Argus is going to invade and they're going to destroy the portal. And then some of the other cool moments in this episode was him taking down the Sons of Liberty. We get those awesome moments of him just absolutely destroying them with the pencil. He uses scissors and axe. It is a really, really cool moment. And we also see Harcourt watching on from the side and just her pure admiration of him, of his courageousness. Now, again, we don't fully know how much that world's Peacemaker was really heroic, but we know our world's Peacemaker, from everything he's been through, he has gone down more of a hero's path versus just wanting to kill people for the sake of peace. He really does want to save people, and that was really shown in this moment. And then we get that cool moment where the helicopter's about to take off and Peacemaker's brother Keith swoops in and stops it. And I'll just say, him in that suit is definitely going to be a problem when he inevitably finds out that Peacemaker killed that version of Peacemaker, his actual brother. So it'll be similar to how difficult it was to deal with Peacemaker's dad in season 1, except they'll both have a pretty hyped up suit. Now, I could see our version of Peacemaker acquiring more tech, especially as he gets more accustomed to that world. He's going to obviously have access to his counterparts technology, his suits, so it may be a little bit more of a fair ground, but still you're going to have two capable fighters in those suits going against him, which is what I really think is going to happen. And then obviously the episode is over, but David Cornsweat on Instagram posted a picture in the Superman suit, and John Cena was obviously in the picture, and I'm showing it on screen right now. He's wearing what he wore in episode 3, and I think he wears that also in episode 4. So this literally confirms Superman is going to appear in the series, and I don't think it's going to be in a small cameo role. I think he'll be a pretty major part of at least one episode. I don't think he'll be in more than 3 episodes. James Gunn said 6, 7, and 8 will be pretty big episodes with some pretty crazy characters in it, and I think those 3 could be Superman. Will all 3 include Superman? I don't know. I think it's more likely he'll be in 1 or 2, but I could definitely see it. And another theory I saw online is Batman could be introduced in this series in a cameo role. And because we know Brave and the Bold won't come out until at least 2028, I think having Batman in this series would be really awesome and a really cool way to introduce him. And he definitely fits in the world of Peacemaker. Superman is a bit more difficult just because he's more of a world character, a world threat character, but Batman is more that street level. Obviously, we know in the Justice League, he has the capability to be a world level hero, but he also gets down nitty gritty and to the street level villains and anti-heroes. So I think Batman being introduced in this series is pretty likely and could be really, really cool. I think if he is introduced, he will have a much smaller role than Superman. So if Superman appears in 2 or 3 episodes, Batman will appear in probably just 1 in maybe a cameo capacity. But let me know what all of you think. What did everyone think of the episode? Was this episode better than the previous one, or did it still feel kind of like a filler? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, like this video, subscribe to the page, and click that noti bell. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.